come out and understand what secure property rights means. And secure property rights are really nothing else but the right that one person has onto his own savings that they're placed in their property. So it's rights on your own property, or whatever you own, lease, rent, whatever that is. And these rights, in order to be secure, they have to be emitted, they have to be issued by a system that is guaranteed, that is liked, that people appreciate, they trust. Now, if this system is not trusted, and this system basically to be trusted needs to be timely, cheap, and enforceable, then we have a broken property rights system, and as a result we have a broken market, and we have informality as an outcome. Many of us traditional economists, when we study economics, we assume property rights out. We assume that they don't exist. We don't actually assume they don't exist. That's a mistake. We assume that they exist, and we start after that. So we take for granted the existence of property rights. And we think in a perfect world. We start our modeling by assuming that transaction costs are almost zero. The market is frictionless in that end. But unfortunately, that's really not the case. The market is not frictionless, and we shouldn't be downplaying it. So my thesis is very much based on the fact that distressed markets are not a function of income disparity, but a function of wealth disparity. And what do I mean by wealth disparity? I mean those who have and those who do not have secure access to their right. So, who are really the poor? The poor are those people who are not able to move out of their homes in a secure way. They cannot appropriate their property and get to their full amount of market wealth in a secure manner, versus those who can. All right? And real estate is pretty much another way of presenting how informal property or informal property rights are defined. The reason I use the word real estate is because, of course, real estate, I'm walking on a floor, right? We're in a real estate building. Right? Real estate means that we can touch it, it's tangible, it's real. But the oxymoron of that tangible asset is the fact that if we live in a community that doesn't have secure property rights, that asset is intangible. It's not real anymore. You can't really do the same things you were able to do if it were real. And that's why I use it in those terms. Now, what is important to identify is the distinction between unreal and real is not black and white, is not binomial, it's not 1-0. It has a variety, it has a spectrum. We can start from fully illiquid property. I love that picture because it's on water, but it is fully liquid. It cannot last for more than a generation maybe, and even so, right? And it can be traded or transferred. Probably can be traded for a very short period of time from one family to the next family, neighboring family, but I would doubt that one too. And then we go to Africa. The first one was in Indonesia. We go down to Africa and we see a less informal or less illiquid asset. Here is a shop, as a matter of fact. This is a shop for bikes. Next to it is a little shack where people are living. This is a market in Burkina Faso, another area of West Africa. And this is Latin America. You see, I'm trying to move you further to still illiquid property, but it looks a little more real, more obvious. Regular families living there. This is an absolute fantastic transition in the same community. So a couple that starts its operation, it's a couple that decides to live together and have a family. This is in Lima, Peru, in Lima, in the outskirts of the city. Buys a lot. You see, it has distinctions, definitions. You may think, and I was thinking when I first walked in there, that they're just all spread out anywhere. But that's not the case. They purchase their lot among themselves. They delineate the lots. You see, these are marks, demarcations. They delineate their lots, but they have, their housing finance is rather bad. So the couple that starts their life together buys one of these panels, these straw panels, because they can't really afford to buy all 4 of them. And it never rains, so you only need 4 panels because you don't really need a roof. But it does get cold at night, so they put one panel, they turn it like an igloo, that's how they call it, and then they put a tarp on it, and then they cover it with another tarp. It's pretty creative, don't you think? This is indeed a home. And if you become a little more serious, and you grow into your family, and you decide to live there for a much longer time, for a year or 2, you move to the second building, which you have to, of course, build yourself. All right? So all of this is with straw panels. And then also liquid, right? And then we come into this market where you have Venezuela to the left. And although you see these old cars, this is only a year ago. And pretty anarchic, the way that the urban structure is put together. Totally out of the urban structures that we would have expected. And this is Greece, where suddenly somebody decided to build an apartment building, putting their, do you notice? Putting their balconies right where the light pole was supposed to go. So that's also another market, right? It's still, but how far can you go with it, right? This is Eastern Europe. Abandoned homes that now gypsies are living in. This is also Eastern Europe again. Very similar structures. And this is in the Middle East, capital city of the Middle East, where the development of the city is such that it hasn't yet formalized the distinction between rural and urban. So this is indeed a capital city. What you see to the right is the Ministry of Health, and to the left, the Ministry of Planning. And what you see right here is 2 goats. And what you see over there is a place where the goats are living. That's also in 2008 picture, only a year and a half ago. And this is my beautiful adopted hometown, Washington, D.C., where we really don't know what to do with that building, and it's been taken away and given back and all that. So the intention, the importance here is to understand that there is, of course, fully informal and fully formal. There is a spectrum. It is possible to transform the informal to the formal. What it is easy is to transform, if you wish, what is easy is to go from the fully informal to semi-formal. So if I were in Africa, or if I were in Latin America, that distinction is easier to reform. It was tough to start it, but once you start it, it's easier to reform. Where it is really difficult is to move from the semi-informal to the formal. So the closer you find the informality to be closer, like in Washington, in the US, or in Greece, or even in Venezuela, that tends to be rather more developed, it's very, very difficult to get consensus for that change. And then we move on to identifying why am I saying that informally liquid or in real estate property is a problem? I mean, and why do we care about 4 billion people living in informal property and the fact that it translates to $9 trillion? Well, there are very serious economic impacts, social impacts, and environmental impacts. The main economic impact is the fact that, the distortion, is the fact that you have a fragile underlying asset. The asset of real estate itself is badly valued because we do not have a full definition of the asset's legal, physical, and financial aspects. We don't have one place, a register in other words, where all this information should be there. Instead, we have to go and collect it from elsewhere, or it becomes too localized. As a result, we have distressed property markets, we have speculation in the properties. Does that remind you of anything? Very close to home. We have illiquidity of savings. In other words, all these people that put their money into this little property, but the property doesn't have marketability, it's not tradable. So it's pretty much like putting your savings in a black